Tracy Gunn is a multi-small business founder and owner who had 2 restaurants and 2 candy stores at the same time. She was tired, frustrated, and ready to quit, but learned the hard way that her businesses weren't sellable. She fixed them by listening to her customers, making changes to her business model, and learned from her experiences, which transformed her life. In this episode, you will learn about the importance of systems and hiring the right people to ensure the success of a business, the importance of owning a business, not just running it, how to exit your business, why you need to think about the end game and have a plan for exiting your business. You will also get actionable strategies for making a business highly desirable and sellable, such as delegating tasks, professionalizing the business, increasing prices, and improving systems and processes.
So my parents divorced when I was 5. So I was 5, my sister was 4, my youngest sister was 1. So we were young. My mom did not drive, didn't have a car, and my dad left. And so like from a very young age, my mom had to overcome obstacles, right? Go to work. So she would bring us to work. We got to see her start as her first job. She worked in a grocery store, but then rose through the ranks and became a manager, then eventually became like a bookkeeper for the store and all those things. But all along, she would do like little side hustles. She'd bring us to that. So like my first job, I was 13, making all the cream cheeses and muffins for a bagel store on Long Island in New York. So like I've always grown up around business, small businesses, working hard, really just understanding systems. And really, other than there was a short period where I stayed home with my children and homeschooled and helped my husband at the time with his business, right? The books and things like that. My dad had his own business that I worked in. So like it's always been a part of us, and maybe not the entrepreneurship as much, but as the hardworking and you can achieve whatever life you want kind of thing, right? That you get to decide the life you have, the level you get to, that money's not bad, and that you should be rewarded for working hard. And if you do the right things, good things will happen, right? Now, does that always work out? No, but that's kind of like where it comes from. And I would say I've won the genetic lottery in that, number one, we're all very hard workers innately. So whether that's nature or nurture, but also we live a long time. Like my great grandmother, my grandmother, we lived till like 99 and 98. So now that my children are raised, I have another 50 years to do whatever I want. Right. And for me, that means freedom. That means trying new things, learning new things, building new things, all those things. So it all comes, I don't know, it's probably a good combo of nature, nurture, right? But it's kind of been woven into everything. And it continues. Although I'll tell you, my 3 kids right now are grown, 25, 29, and 31, and none of them have their own businesses. Maybe I cured them. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes you find that people that are raised around entrepreneurial people become entrepreneurial, and then the opposite side happens because, the kids see the stress of it or the idea of that uncertain paycheck,
Yep.
and they go, oh gosh, no, I don't want none of that. I'm just going to go to college and, my parents have paid for college because they've done quite well. And so I've got no
Right.
debt. I can start fresh and not have to worry about that. And they just want security because they've grown up in a very secure environment. So I completely
Right.
understand that. But it sounds
Yeah.
like from your perspective, what you got from seeing your mum level up as a career person, an entrepreneur with her side hustles is you got the mindset side of things and you kind
Yeah.
of caught that entrepreneurial bug. So
Yeah.
I wonder if you could talk to me about the kind of first business you started and what the first month, year, and
Oh,
preceding years looked like after
for
that.
sure. So actually, I mean, it's an interesting story because it's not, some people have the dream of a business and then they they sit with it for a while and they dream and they have the perfect thing and they invest all this money. That was not me at all. So my ex-husband now, but he was in 9/11. We were in Manhattan. He had his own business and he had some PTSD from that. And a bunch of years later, when I had homeschooled for a long time, my kids decided to go to school. And one day my husband told me that he had an addiction problem. He had some mental health things. And all of a sudden, like my whole world, I went from like being completely at home, raising my children and completely secure to not secure at all and having no place, right? Like I had a job to do and now I don't have a job to do. And so I had a decision to make for me, and that was I could, go to meetings and complain about my life and cry about things, or I could just make lemonade and try to figure out a way out, right? I've always been a hard worker, smart. I was like, I could figure this out. And actually, I had built a whole business plan for a different business, and I was looking at spaces, and I found this space, and it was like it had creaky floors and like bright windows, and I was like, this would be an amazing candy store. And there we went. Like I just shifted, didn't even write a business plan, just jumped in. And the rent was right. And I thought, you know what, for a couple $1,000 I can get started. Rent was like I think 550 at the time, which was not a lot of money. Everything in my life was kind of like upside down, but I figured for that amount of money, I'll work it and I'll figure it out, as opposed to going to jobs and things like that. And so that's kind of how I did. And I named it Life is Sweet because I figured if I said it enough, answering the phone or welcome, that it would remind me that when things were crappy, that things would get better. And so that was kind of how I started. I decided to do it in November of 2006, got all my leases, everything open January 6th, which is not a good time because everybody's on a diet. So that was a bad decision. Didn't think about it. I just wanted to get open. And January in November in New Hampshire is really cold. So it was like a downtown location where you had to park and walk. That was not a good plan. And everyone being on a diet in January, not a good plan. But sometimes when things are hard to start and you don't have any money, you have to be really smart and you have to really pay attention to every choice you make. Right? Instead of, sometimes when people have like millions of dollars, before they know it, it's gone because they had all this money to play with. Well, I didn't have any of those things. So I really had to, and my, life was kind of like in a weird space. So I had to make sure that every choice I made was a good one. And if I made a bad choice, that I had to fix it and all those things. So I learned really quickly what worked, what didn't. I changed the whole model. At first, it was all full serve. And I realized people don't like that. They want to pick the candy they want and they don't want you judging them for how much they get. So I changed the whole model. So the first couple months, so it's interesting because I just opened a new location in North Carolina this weekend. And our first day at my first one, I remember it was like $40. Like it was not a lot of money, but I was so happy because I was like, proof of concept, right? Like people came and they bought and they gave me money. Excellent. And onward from there. Now if that store made $40, I would cry
Of
because,
course, yeah.
right, my expectations have grown. But this new location, I think we just had our first day, no sign, it was kind of just a soft open, but it was $650. Beautiful, right? That's because I'm smarter now. I know more. I've learned the things, but still new location, not a perfect open, not anywhere near where we want to be, but like very different. 18 years ago, I would have been over the moon, out of my mind with a 600 plus opening day, right? And so it's just funny how you change your perspective and your expectations as you grow in your business, right? But you also get better at it. So that's kind of how we started. And you know what? We were in a position where I couldn't really quit, right? I had invested the money. It was time to make it work. So for a while, that first couple, actually, I stayed for 9 years. I worked waitressing at night. I had staff, waitress at night. and to bring in extra money. They gave me benefits. You know, like you just make things work the best that you can. My kids all worked in my store, you know, grew up in it, think they knew. I fired a few of them and then rehired them, you know, all the things you do with family business. But I think, even though they haven't done the entrepreneurial thing yet, I think it's in there. And I think it prepared them for life and to be good workers wherever they wind up. Like my oldest is a doctor. She's an excellent doctor because she knows how to talk to people because she worked in my candy store, right? So all those things, it kind of all work together for good.
Mm. You said when you started out, you made a few mistakes, right? So, opening up in January, not the best time. Everyone's on a diet, location not so ideal, etc., etc. But I'm wondering how you overcame those issues, right? Because the business stayed open, and staying open means that you were making some money or enough money to at least keep going. So,
Yeah.
what did you change? What did you do that made your business become, a self-sustaining enterprise as opposed to one that was costing you money?
Right. Well, I mean, I was very grateful. I joined a couple business groups. I joined our downtown group, eventually wound up like leading that for like 12 years. Um, just trying to connect with the community. I listened to my customers. What did they like? What they didn't like? Added products, changed from full serve to self serve. That really helped. I had gelato at the time. It was just kind of, when you start, you're just kind of throwing things at the wall to figure out what do people want. Especially because, I mean, every business is kind of the same, right? You have customers, you have sales, you have expenses, right? You hope you have some profits, you have staff eventually to free up some time. But like what that looks like in each business is different. And so, figuring out what does that look like in this location. And the interesting thing is, all these years later, in this town that I'm opening in, this is the first probably of a few down here, it's different. What they're looking for is different. The town is different. The north versus the south is different. Their likes, right? Communities here, Charlotte area is growing like crazy. There's lots of people with lots of money. Medium income is high. Back home, where my store has been for X amount, 18 years, the median income is low, right? We've transitioned. And so, I mean, for me, I felt like the writing's on the wall. I can't really grow past where we are because of the demographics there. But to start again and try and learn, that's the fun part, I think, being an entrepreneur, is right? Figuring out, okay, these are all the things I know. This is what I'm putting into practice. How can I do it really streamlined and efficient? And what's going to work? Right? What do I miss? What did I make a mistake on? Same thing. So again, I changed service. I listened to customers. I changed pricing, hired staff to free me up so I wasn't there all the time. I didn't want to be the person behind the register. I mean, I still am the candy lady to my town, but I didn't want to be that person every day. I never wanted to be that. And so from the beginning, I hired and learned how to make it work, even with smaller profit margins, but to be able to have freedom, right? And so it was only later that, like, I had added two restaurants and another candy store all at the same time, that all of a sudden my time kind of got chopped up. And so, yeah, I mean, it's amazing if you're paying attention, and again, not having the resources makes you pay attention. You just have to. Um, every time I made an order, it was like 200, there was a $200 minimum, I remember, and they deliver for free. Every $200 was like strategic because if I messed up, now, the lucky part, I chose a good business, is that candy doesn't really go bad, lasts a long time. But, if I made a bad choice and nobody wanted it, it would sit there for a long time. And so, right, getting smarter about what I do. Now I do, this new store, I probably have $10,000 worth of inventory. And, but I know what most people like, right? So it's not so risky now because I have some cushion. Back then, though, no cushion at all. So really, and it meant the difference between paying for my mortgage or not, right? Now, not so much.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I don't know that I'm sharper now. I think on some level, having cushion and having resources slows your growth. I mean, it can really exponentially scale you faster, but when you're trying to learn brand new in a new location, new system, new whatever, having too much money, you could really waste a lot because you're just throwing, right? But when you have to really go slow and strategic, it makes you smarter faster. That's just my experience. But yeah, it's interesting. Like I've kind of come full circle, right?
Yeah. Well, that's the
Back
goal,
to
isn't
the
it, as an
uni.
entrepreneur? Is you start your business, it starts going, you stop working in the business, you start working on the business, then you can try and tinker around with the smaller parts of things like, right, okay, I want to spend this much on stock and I want to make this much from that stock. What's going to sell quickest? I want to turn this around in 30 days, 60 days, whatever, so I can meet the payment terms of my suppliers. But you're not at that point yet where you can have advanced payment terms with suppliers. And, once you get to that level, that's when you're having the most fun as an entrepreneur, because you're tweaking and refining and, saving cents on the dollar and going, oh man, if I can save a cent per order or per item, then I'm making X amount more. And, most entrepreneurs never really get to that point because they spend too much time working in the business and they're not hiring the right people. And you mentioned earlier that, obviously you hired some of your children because that's good
Yeah.
free labor. You can't you
Yeah,
can't complain
right.
about that. But once you hire a stranger or someone that's come from an
Yeah.
interview and all that kind of stuff, I'm wondering, as someone who's hired a lot of people in their time, what are the kind of things you're looking for in a person to make sure that person's the right person to work with you?
I mean, it's a hard thing. And I'm finding it's again interesting timing is that my location here was so easy to hire. So easy. But my location in New Hampshire is still really difficult. I mean, we are constantly hiring, constant, and the pay rate is astronomical there in New Hampshire, whereas down here we're paying like 25% less. Now, that's the difference between profitable and not profitable, right? Your payroll. And so, it all of those things, like it's really difficult to find people again, not to bag on the young generation, but most of my people are newbies, right? We're their first job. I take that really seriously. I'm responsible for teaching these kids how to do a job right, how to count money, how to treat customers, how to pay attention, how to work, right? And not just be scrolling on their phone sitting there, right? Like to find projects, to do the checklist, like all those things. And so over the years, thankfully, because this is the way my brain worked and working waitressing really helped with this, is that the organization I worked for had amazing checklists that kept their business like they big corporations they have the experience, right? To do this at 100 stores, you have to have systems. And so it really taught me about having systems to make sure all the things get done every day, every month, every, right? Rotating stock or making, I mean, it's food. You want it to be clean. You want, when I had my restaurants, it was like, okay, what server does what? How does that work? Who does the kitchen? Who does the ordering? What's on the menu, right? To make sure there's enough crossover that you're not just having one item with lobster because it costs a lot, right? You want to have it in like a few different things or, same for chicken or whatever it is you're doing, right? You learn about those systems. And I'm really grateful. Not only did they pay me and give me benefits, right? And help me to sustain the business because I didn't have to take money out of it when I started, but it also gave me the springboard to know how to do it. Right. So that when I started my first restaurant, I was like, oh, I can do this. This is going to be easy. Now, was it easy? No. But I had the confidence because I had watched and learned, right? I mean, and so then when I opened the second restaurant, I knew even more about it, right? So we just kind of stepped forward, and that's kind of entrepreneurship, right? We have like brand new business owner muscles, and then the more that we do, the stronger those muscles get, and also how much we can carry and handle grows. right? And sometimes to our detriment, right? And our sanity, but like we get really good at handling everything and everybody, right? And hiring good people, if you can find them, makes or breaks it. I mean, that's just, my candy store right now in New Hampshire, because we've had such trouble hiring, if we had the staff that I'd really like to have, we would be making more money without a doubt, right? But we're at like the bare expectations of will you show up and do most of your work, right? Not do the things I want you to do, but like will you do, at least show up and not steal from me, right? The bar is very low because we've had such trouble. Here, because it's brand new, the bar is very high. Like I expect you to do this, this, and this every time, the end, right? And so, whether or not that original store will continue or not, we'll see. It just may be easier to start fresh somewhere else because the labor pool is so small and maybe polluted, who knows, but like where we are. Um, there's only so much wiggle room for payroll, right? I mean, you paying again, when I first started the candy store, most of the staff made between $7 and $9 an hour. Now they make from like 12 or 13 to 20. It's a huge difference. Everything's gone up, price has gone up, so at some point you start to have this threshold that you can't break, right? Because all of a sudden, like every time it goes up, I mean, how much can you raise the price of candy, right? But if your payroll's doubled, like, what do you do? So, I mean, you have to get clever. But I mean, it's been really interesting. And it's going to be a really interesting case study for me just to see the two, right? This very high service one in New Hampshire where we do cupcakes, we do baking, we do chocolate making, we do ice cream, we do all the things. And this one here that's really streamlined and very small, and one person can run it,
Yeah.
right? Very different. So it's going to be really interesting, and hopefully over time, again, because most of my staff is lower level, right, entry level. Um, the biggest, I'll tell you this, Sam, like the biggest thing right now, we're trying to switch it from having any cash because I'm finding more and more young people don't know how to do the money, no matter how,
Right.
like they'll know how to do. So if it says give change of 13.89, they know how to do the 13, but they do not know how to do the coin. And
Right.
it's
So
like,
they
are
went
you
know to put like, a 50-cent piece, a 10, a 20,
exactly,
a 5
exact?
and 4,
They
you know what I
don't
mean?
know how
They're
to
not
do it.
working it right. Yeah. Okay.
And
Got
so,
you.
and I've tried, I like downloaded, I had to fire a little girl at Christmas and she really wanted to work there, but she could not figure out the money. And
Right.
what do you do? Like you're either stealing from the customer or you're stealing from me, right? Like
Hmm.
this is not a good situation. I downloaded a course to teach her because this is a life skill she needs.
Hmm.
But I mean, everybody's using a card or their phone.
Yeah.
And so it's one of those things like we're going to transition out of that because I'm tired of paying people, figure 20 minutes a day to count a drawer and then they count it wrong anyway, and then giving change, right? So like all that time and money in having cash, it's just worth paying 2% to a merchant processor and call it a day. At
Yeah.
least I'll get my money, right?
Yeah.
Like at least it won't be lost. We won't have to go to the bank. We won't have to have change, all the things. But these are shifts in by having businesses, especially retail for a long time, you see how things have changed.
Yeah, we're moving towards a cashless world, definitely. And there's this thing as well where kids nowadays are used to just seeing their parents tap the card or put the card in. They're not really used to seeing cash unless it's, in their birthday card or,
Mhm.
granny's
Yeah,
giving them a little $20, that type of thing. So you're
yeah,
100% right there to get rid of that person that was actually making the business not run effectively. But you've also gone, ah, I see that the problem here is actually that people just don't know how to work the
yeah,
float of the cash. I need to take this cashless, and that will take
yeah.
away all the headache because there's no
Trend.
quibbles there with that kind of
You
thing.
can't, and some people get really angry. And then again, we just had this shift where we're not doing that because we used to have about $600 in cash all the time for change and stuff for the week. And so we went down to just 50 and like $50 worth of change, like quarters and things like that. But you know what? People were angry that we didn't have it. And again, went back to staff not explaining, right? Oh, we can't take your cash. That's not what we said. What we said was we're not going to be breaking 20s and 50s for dollar, right? We're just not, we don't have the capacity. But if you have $5, we're happy to give you some change, right? But again, it's teaching the staff, right? Helping the, it's lost in translation for them, right? They just say, oh, we won't take your cash. Well, that is not what we said. That's not what the sign says. This is where you get to with employees. This is why sometimes people hate their businesses because their employees are like slowly killing the business because they don't understand the bigger picture and they don't understand and they're not listening and they don't care enough to understand it either, right? And so it's that's a really difficult piece, right? But I already from the beginning have set myself up to not be the person in the business, right? The E-Myth was my like favorite book. I know it's very simple, but it tells the story of do you want to own a business? Do you want to run a business? Because those are two different things, right? And I never wanted to run. I don't mind starting, I don't mind helping, I don't mind shaping, forming, but I do not want to be that person every day, right? Which is why we have systems, which is why we have, a methodology of, a unique, the same experience every time, no matter who's behind the counter. Those things can make or break you, right? And so, staff will forever be problematic, right?
Mm, yeah.
Is it a wonder that like McDonald's or places are trying their best to be automated? Because, well, first, it costs a lot, but second, the inconsistency in the human, right? Now, if they're young and cute and nice and sweet and friendly, well, that covers a lot of, mistakes. But if they're not those things and there's mistakes, that's a hard one to come back from, you know?
Mm. Yeah.
So,
And you mentioned something there as well about either running a business or owning a business.
mhm.
So if you're running a business, you might make yourself a very profitable job and you might work a couple hours a week and all that kind of
Mhm.
cool stuff for like the 4 hour work week kind of life. But if you
Sure.
own a business, you're then able to
Yeah.
sell that onto someone else because it's something that they
Correct.
can buy and have as an asset. So
Yeah.
you are well known for making businesses exitable. So I wonder if you can talk
Yes.
to me about the
Sure.
process, the kind of things to look for when you're looking to exit a business, that type of thing.
Right.
I'm sure the first step is owning a business, not running a business. So talk to me
Correct.
about your experience of exits and how you
Sure.
help other entrepreneurs exit.
Sure. So this was kind of born out of my own cautionary tale, right? So I am definitely, again, serial entrepreneur. I love a new opportunity. My muscles got real strong at handling things, right? So I just kept taking on. So my candy store kind of was just doing its own thing. So I was a little bored and I decided, oh, I'll open a restaurant, right? And so I started that. And then, I would check in at the candy store and was running the restaurant. But then I had like a little argument with my landlord, who was our city. It was at an airport, so it was like complicated. And so I was like, I'm going to open a different restaurant. We'll close this one. So then I'll still have two. Well, then I opened the big restaurant. It was like 6,500 square feet, which is very large. Like that's 400 people big. And that was mostly a nighttime bar, live entertainment, but we did weddings and catering. So that was a very big jump. But then my pilots were mad and didn't want me to close the restaurant. So now I've got a candy store, a day restaurant for the most part, breakfast, lunch, and a night restaurant. So now, and then I added, because I'm silly, another candy store. So now my days are just flat out, and I am not doing all the jobs, but I still am the engine that made everything go. I'm the connector. And so I got to this place a few years in with all these things going where I was just a little tired and grumpy, burnt out, right? Um, 1 in the morning looking around the bar thinking, I don't want to be doing this anymore. Like I don't like my staff, I don't like my customer, I'm just over it. Plus, my daughter had a grandson. So I was like, I don't want to be here. I want to be there. I want to go. And so that started me thinking about selling my business. Now, before that, I had always thought someday I'll sell, right? This long off thing. And that the goal was to build. So I was the owner, and that someday those businesses would pay me back, right? Decent wealth transfer. That was the goal, but I never had a plan and I didn't really have in mind what that looked like. So when I hired a broker to say, hey, I want to sell, his answer was, you don't have anything worth selling, which was really devastating for me. I cried. Um, and then I had to really think about, okay, why? Why does he feel this way? Is he right? And what can I do about it? Right now, opportunist, right? So I was like, okay, what's my opportunity here? Do I just keep going? Do I set a match and watch it burn and run away? Like, what do I do? And so for me, I was like, all right, the biggest headache was my big bar. I was like, I'm going to give myself 6 months. I'm going to give myself 6 months. I'm going to understand what makes my business valuable. I'm going to do whatever I can to get myself out of this thing because a transferable business is a sellable business. Because I'm not going with it. So if you pull me out and the pieces fall apart. And so I really had to shift my mindset about, okay, what do I need to fix to get me the heck out of here, right? Plus, the benefit of that in the first month was I wasn't working as hard because I had delegated. I had started the offloading, right? I changed my mindset of, oh, it's just easier for me to do it. I'll take care of it, to nope, who's going to do this? Who am I going to assign this to, right? I knew that if I didn't do that, whether it be people, whether it was going to be a process or tech or a combination of those things, there was no selling this business. And so within a couple months, I actually had one of my customers approach me to buy. Now, again, I didn't make millions, but it went from not being sellable at all to somebody wanting to buy my business, all because he could see the changes. And I was talking about it like, I'm giving myself 6 months, like I gave myself my deadline, the time is ticking, but he could see the value there. And he had a dream of always owning a bar. And so that worked out for me, right? But now I started to think about it different because, here's the thing. I think I'm pretty smart, right? I'm not a dummy. Why didn't I ever think about, like, I was dedicating all this time and money and energy into a business, not thinking about the end game. Like, most people don't start a marathon with no idea where the finish line is, right? Like, they know how far they have to go. Well, why didn't I do that? And what I figured out was I'm not special in that. 99% of people aren't thinking about that either.
Mm.
And it's only when some kind of thing happens that transitions them, right, from being like owning the business to wanting to be out of the business. And exitable can mean sold. It can mean, somebody's earning in, you're earning out. It could mean full ownership, but you never have to show up. I mean, it can mean a lot of different things. My goal for my candy stores, other than like I'm launching this one, but it's almost never be there, right? I have some touch points, but like really the goal is for it to do its thing without me, right? That is exitable to me in that scenario, but exitable in the other ones was to sell. So it just means you're not working in the business all the time, right? And that's kind of what I focused on. And the less involved you are, or professionalize it's the business, the more valuable it is. Even if it doesn't have a ton of profit, if it's running without the owner, it has value. And
Right.
so that's kind of how this was born. And I realized, gosh, I'm not the only one who doesn't know this stuff. And so that's kind of what's like my mission because I love business and I love business owners. Like I think we're a special breed. We're like, superheroes. Like we like push the economy. We employ the people of our country. Like we are the ones. We're the foundation. And we should be able to win. And if it just takes a little forethought to win, why not?
Yeah. And what are some of the secrets to having a successful business and selling it? Because it sounds like you kind of tweaked a few things in your business to make it work better in the bar business, and then someone was like, "Oh, this looks perfect. I'll buy this off you." But these are things that most people don't really know. Like they might be running a profitable business, or they might be running a business that can run without them in it. But I'm sure there's a secret to making a business that is sellable or accessible.
Well, I mean, it has to run without you. So that's the easiest, right? Is you think about, okay, what are the things that I'm doing? So the way we usually do with our clients is we start with like figuring out what the owner actually wants, because very rarely we're just in it. We're not really thinking about where do we want to be in 10 years or in 5 years. And very rarely are we thinking, what do I want? Right? Like for me, I had this come to Jesus moment of, I don't want this, which helped me to really get clear. But what did I want? Well, I wanted freedom. I wanted to be able to travel. I wanted to be able to see my grandchildren. I wanted to still be able to have opportunities and try things, but not be tied to a location, right? I want to explore the country. So like by identifying those things, it really helped me to filter out what I didn't want. So it wasn't attractive to me because, we love shiny objects. And so clearing out, like, even when I get off track, like I had a few people offer me this past year a couple restaurants to take over. And I was like, for the moment, was like, ooh. And then I was like, wait, what do you want? Right? Just because it's a shiny opportunity doesn't mean you want it. Right. And so for me, like that was really it for me. So I think when people figure out what they want, and they also set their exit date, right? Now, whether that's not working in the business, whatever that looks like, but setting a date, a target helps the countdown begin, right? The pressure starts, right? So for me, I said 6 months. So we call, set the date because all of a sudden everything gets like tunnel vision, right? All the things that used to be like, oh, maybe I should try this, right? Because it's all about more and growing. This brings you right into focus of, nope, this is what we're focusing on. So then it's okay. What am I doing that if you remove me is going to fall apart? So we do a time diary just to see what the owners are doing, right? Some of them are real easy to get rid of. Like, are they buying the snacks for the business? Well, are they running to the grocery store? Are they, or like for me in the restaurant, like we turned on our loyalty program. It was already in our system. We just hadn't turned it on, right? So now all of a sudden we have a list. I mean, that made that more valuable, right? We could predict how often a customer could come in and how much they were worth. Before that was all guess, right? We had a way to communicate with them. So that was helpful and didn't cost me a dime. I shouldn't say that. What I did was I trained my staff to offer a free appetizer for signing up and just had to teach them to do that, right? They're giving free things to their customers. They were on board for that, right? Bigger tips for them, email address for me, easy peasy. But like, it didn't cost me any more. I didn't have to go out and find a software or anything like that. I was just teaching them. And once I taught them, we were done. So like that thing, or I had a staff person who was on my staff already in the kitchen. She had run a bar before, so she knew how to do liquor inventory. I wasn't good at liquor. I didn't quite understand how to do it, and it's labor intensive because you got to measure and all that. And I had zero interest in doing that. So for 4 hours a week, so it cost me $100 a week, she started doing that, and I found a ton of theft. Like the first week, we were down like 150 to 200 beer bottles.
Yeah.
Like, and so all of a sudden, I could identify who was working when all the things disappeared, who wasn't doing the right thing, fire people, and voila, all of a sudden we're more profitable because we don't have people stealing from us, right? And all of a sudden our cost of goods went down. Like all those things, right? Ripple effect of by hiring her to take care of something that I didn't even know was a problem, you know? Because again, I wasn't thinking about it the right way. I was thinking, oh, it's a bottle of Jack Daniels, so what, right? It's $45, whatever, it's missing. And her point was, no, it's not a bottle of Jack. It's not $45. It's more like $300 because
Because when you sell it, yeah,
that's
exactly.
how much money they're putting in their pocket by taking by overpouring, by not charging, right? So when you think about now, you're like, oh, $45, whatever, right? Or you think about 150 beer bottles at $3 or $4 a pop. Well, I mean, that's 1 week. So like, it just opened my mind, but only because I was thinking about how can I make this business more efficient and more predictable and stable, right? So that if you remove me, everything stays the same. And so, but again, it took me shifting what I was thinking about, what I was focused on, right? Um, and by delegating, I was able to free up time to do that more and more and more, right? And a nice result is that I didn't hate it as much anymore, right? I didn't hate everybody, so I wasn't as angry, I wasn't as frustrated because I had gotten some things off my plate that weren't that hard to do. I just hadn't done it before, you know?
Mm.
So those are the things I would say, think about in your business. Like if you're feeling like I hate my business, I hate my customers, I hate my staff, I wish I had never done this, take a look and think about what do you really want, right? When do you want it? And what can you do to get yourself there? And it's really that simple. Now, obviously, we work a little bit more in depth, but we always start that same way because the driver is what do you want, right? You don't have to drag an owner through something that they want, right? They want to sell their business for X amount of dollars. Well, this is how we have to get there. It's easy to get them to commit and do it because that's what they want, right? It's different if you tell them they have to do it and they don't want to, right?
Mm. And what is it that sellers are looking for in a business that they want to buy? Because obviously, yes, there's the idea of having a lot of customer details or access to a certain demographic of people, but there's lots of different small businesses all across the world, and they sell and people buy them all the time. So what are buyers looking for?
Well, I guess it just to really what I found is, and again, my experience was just my experience, but as I've worked with other owners in their businesses, it's very different dependent on the buyer. So the things you need to do are different. So for example, I'll give you two examples. Like one, I had this gentleman and he owned a oil delivery company for heat in Boston. Well, he's had it for 40 years. The people who are going to buy his and pay a lot of money for it are people who already have oil companies. They already are doing this. They want his list, period, end of story. Because he knows if they do a good job, they will stay with him, right? So, do they care about his standard operating procedures and his employees? And they don't really care about that. They want that list. Now, he probably is going to package it all up together, but like the point is that that buyer is very different than maybe my buyer who was a first time business owner. He needs the stability across everything. He needs everything to be working and in place. And what you'll find is buyers are willing to pay more. I would say the multiple is higher based on their confidence in the return. So, in other words, if they know that everything's stable in the business and that they can guarantee when you remove the owner that everything's going to maintain and stay the same, maybe even get better, they will pay way more higher of a multiple than if they have low confidence, right? The more profitable you are, usually the correlation is the higher of the multiple because people are willing to pay for profit, right? And they know, so if you have a profit of, let's say, 500,000 every year, people will pay 2 or 3x that because they know in 3 years it's all profit, right? And so, but if you're buying a business that has, 50 to 100,000 in profitability, let's just say, which is, I would say, 90% of American businesses are that range because they say 92% of owners never get to $1 million a year in revenue. So most of them do not have high profit margins. So you're talking lower end. Most of those are going to sell for 1x. And if the owner's involved, the confidence is lower, right? So you have to think about it like this. Like the buyer, now some people are just buying to grow, right? Through mergers and acquisitions, right? That's the fastest, easiest way to grow, right? They're just adding on. So like I don't know about this in the UK, but like here, there are people out there scooping up, let's say, auto repair shops because all these people are retiring. They're just scooping them up and putting them all together because 10 of them together share resources and worth more for 10 than for one. They don't even have to improve profitability just by being together in one little clump. It's a chain instead of a single. It's worth more. So that's a strategy for some people. But like, let's just say I've been in discussions with someone who owns a cider company, right? Spiked cider, and they want to sell. They're not super profitable. So the thought is, okay, well, a value add for a winery, the process is similar. They may want to be expanding beyond wine, but not have to invest a ton in machinery and new products and new lines. Well, that's a good match for her. She already knows her process, she knows her recipe, she knows how to do it. Now she just has to show them the brand has a following. That's a good value add for them, right? I'm someone who likes a cider, not beer, not wine. So that's a new person that would be coming to their vineyard, right? So it's just about figuring out what buyer would be good for you, right? And then just doing the things that are going to matter to that buyer, if that makes
Mhm.
sense. Yeah. So
Yeah.
like, and they're all looking for something different. Like if they're just going to get folded up in their company, they don't care what your processes are. They don't care about, your point of sale. They don't care because they're going to just bring it all into theirs. They already have it. Right. But if again, you have somebody who's brand new, like fresh out of culinary school who wants to own a restaurant, they have so much to learn, right? They are going to need that stability, right? And then you can also discuss, right? You don't, exiting could look a lot of different ways, but selling can look a lot of different ways. I mean, you could retain some ownership and just guide the new person who does all the work. You could earn out after a few years. You could, sell or finance so that way you have a stake, and then if it falls apart, you have a say, you come back and you get your business back, right? Like there's a lot of different ways to structure that. And I think there's a lot of different opportunities. You just have to be open to being creative about it. Because the likelihood someone's going to buy your business outright is pretty small.
Yeah.
Just
Yeah,
just
you have
is.
to you have to do an element of selling or prettying up your business.
Yes,
So I'm
for
wondering for
sure.
you, what are a few actionable strategies that we can give to business owners or entrepreneurs today to make their business into a highly desirable asset that is sellable or exitable?
Absolutely. So, I mean, if you think about it, there's a lot of correlation between real estate and business. Now, you can't comp them the same because every business is different. It's a little harder to match that. But the same is true for both. So, like if you were selling your house and you want top dollar for it, you might invest 10, 20,000 into redoing the kitchen, right? Because the return on that's going to be 3x, right? And you're going to get this higher level. Whereas, or you just might want to clean it up. You might just want to tidy the yard. You might want to put some plants in. You might want to build the deck. You might want to do some repairs that you've been putting off, right? And so maybe it's time for a new heater, right? Or oil tank or whatever, right? You're thinking, but usually a real estate broker, right? You hire them, they come in and they say, okay, this is what we're gonna do. We're gonna stage it, we're gonna make it beautiful, we're gonna paint, we're gonna freshen everything up, we're gonna do a deep clean, we're gonna declutter everything. Same exact is true for your business, right? Think about like when I sold and liquidated and condensed the stores, all the excess wound up in my one basement in my candy store. There was so much junk in there, right? I should have just like dumped a lot of it. But I mean, so like think about people are going to come walk through there, right? That's just the physical part, right? It's updating the walls, it's making sure it's nice and clean, making sure your systems and your procedures are in place, making sure making sure you have staff. Like maybe you hire someone to be you and you teach them so you can be out of it. Or maybe you take your job and you spread it to three or four people, or AI, or, a different program, right? You outsource it, you get a VA, all those things to offload all your jobs. And now you're kind of an owner. And you know that if you professionalize your business, you can almost expect a 4x on on your profit versus owner operated, right? Owner involved. And so that's a worthy investment of your time and energy. But also, like the basics, like how are your books? Maybe this year you stop spending on things, right? Maybe you get real clear about your budget and stay in it, right? Because when it's yours, you often use it like a piggy bank, right? We have our car payments coming out of there, our cell phone, our home office, or this or that. We go, we're market researching at other restaurants and we're joining a mastermind. We're doing all those things, right? But if we want to fluff up and fix the numbers, maybe we don't spend as much this year, right? If it's in 3 years, well, now you've got something to aim for. And the other thing is really taking a stock of, okay, when was the last time I raised my prices? You know how many people that I meet with who've owned their businesses for 30, 40, 50 years and haven't raised prices in years because it doesn't resonate. So my husband's a builder and he only recently raised his prices to 50 an hour, right? He does jobs, but like if he was charging by hour. And I said, do you know guys that have a year or two experience are charging that same amount? But he can't wrap his head around it because it feels wrong to him because he remembers when he was making $15 an hour as a builder, right? But my point is that you are way more valuable because of your lifelong knowledge in your business. So if you've been in business for 10 years or 15 years or 20 years, yes, you may not have kept up on all the latest technology, but your experience and knowledge of the industry is valuable, right? So you can charge more for that. So you increase prices. Maybe you get rid of some product lines that aren't working, right? Maybe you do a better job at keeping records. Maybe you hire a bookkeeper and you automatically use a card for everything and just download everything into QuickBooks instead of you manually entering everything, right? There's a lot of wasted time and money and energy in our businesses, but we're just so used to doing them and it's easy for us that we don't really consider it. You know, a really interesting thing is to think about how many people would it take to replace me in my business?
Yeah, 100%. That's something that you really should consider because it's like if you're able to replace yourself, yes, it sounds like you're costing the business money, but it's like when you're working in your business for free, there's a value attached to that, right? And a lot of people don't think of it in that way at all.
Exactly. That's exact. And that's the thing is like when you can add back. So when you figure out your raw, like I do my down and dirty valuation is just, what was your profit last year versus like what level is it at? If it's under 150, or if it's over, like what your multiple is going to be. But one of the things you can do is add back in, right? So I do use my business as kind of as a piggy bank, right? So like if I want to do a mastermind, the business pays for that, right? If I want to learn a new skill, the business pays for that. So that takes away from my profitability because I'm investing in me through the business, right? Because I know that's going to pay me long term. But if you want to sell, maybe that's not what you do this year. So, or if you're working for free, you have to deduct from your profit what it would cost to replace you,
Mm,
right?
100%.
Um,
Yeah.
And so now again, maybe you're paying yourself 150,000 and to replace you it's going to cost 50,000. So okay, so then maybe your profit's now 100,000 instead of 150. But you have to account for that because and it goes back to what buyers want. Most buyers do not want to buy your job.
Yeah,
They want a
100%.
business,
Yeah.
right? Most of us don't want our own jobs, let alone to buy one. Right now, it's okay to get in there and get your hands dirty for a year or two to understand the business and to add to it, but it shouldn't be dependent on you.
I want to ask you one question that I ask every single guest, and the answer is unique to yourself, but the question is very broad. What is it about what you do that brings you the most joy?
I, well, because I do a lot of things. So I'm going to talk about Exitable because this is my passion project, right? This is not making me millions, but it's the one thing that I could see myself doing until I die because it's valuable, I think. I believe that business owners are the foundation of our country and we need them. And, you know, the largest generation of them are retiring rapidly, and there's going to be a really big gap in our economy in our country. And I think it's really important to not only to get them to be able to win on their exit, right? To not liquidate, right? Which would just leave a vacuum for where they were. And then also to introduce the opportunity of ownership to the younger, right? A lot of them are very stuck in their debt from college and the expenses of things. But, we need to, I think, revitalize ownership, right? And ownership that's empowering and freeing, not enslaving. So, for those reasons, I think this is really important to do, and I probably will die talking about it. So,
Where can the people find you online?
oh, that's easy peasy. So we have a website called getexitable.com. There's some free resources on there. There's a way to book a call that if you're thinking about exiting, our avatar is two people. Number one, it's people who are getting ready to retire or go to a new passion project, and they're not in a ton of pain in the business because they've kind of figured out how to make it work for them. But it's pretty much, it's not usually sellable yet, right? And they want to understand the process. The other avatar, which is what I was, which is the burnt out, tired, I hate my life, I hate my business, get me out of here yesterday person. We work with both of them. The process is the same, the pain level's different, right? I have found people that are in burnout and just are so tired are usually more motivated to do something right now because they just can't do it anymore, right? But if you're either of those things or anywhere in between, you can book a call and let's just talk about what your options are, right? Because better to know what you can do and what's likely or not likely, and then you can make some choices based on it. That's on that getexitable.com or the Tracy Gunn, kind of everywhere.
Thank you for listening to People Explained. New episodes come out every Monday. We would appreciate it if you gave us a review on Apple Podcasts and shared this episode with a friend.